The 100 Line Lost Defense Academy is without a doubt one of the craziest and most ambitious games that I have ever played. Within this academy, I have experienced a journey like no other, one that explores war, dehumanization and loss, a tale about perspectives and the nature of humanity. There have been betrayals and plot twists that made me rethink the entire narrative, only for them to twist the story again a couple of hours later. This cast of characters might look silly, cringy and very over the top on the surface, but I can't help but love them. They've gotten me emotional on multiple occasions and all I want is for them to find their happy ending. And I'm not lying or exaggerating when I say that these are all feelings that have occurred to me within the prologue. After which the game showed its true colors and became a true once-in-a-lifetime experience. Even after exploring this deeply interconnected maze of a narrative for over 150 hours, and after seeing multiple satisfying conclusions, this game still gives me the feeling that there's plenty left to see, and I am still incredibly hooked. I'll get into how that's possible in a second, but a while ago I did talk about the 100 Line already on my channel, with my initial thoughts and first impressions. While this video will focus on the broader experience that the game offers, if you want more detailed thoughts on the early hours, then you can find that video somewhere on screen and in the description. Of course, you can just watch this video on its own, or you can go watch that video and then come back, or you can watch it afterwards. It's all up to you. But it's kind of crazy for me looking back at that video. It's great for an initial introduction, but the Archery from 7 to 8 months ago genuinely just had no idea what he was getting into. This game turned into so much more of an insane experience, and that is what I want to focus on today. But everything that I said in that video still rings true, of course. This is the new game from Tokyo Games, a studio founded by Kazutaka Kodaka and Kotaro Ichikoshi. I was just underestimating the insanity that would spawn from these two working together, because the studio isn't actually called Tokyo Games, as I've been referring to it up till now. It's actually called Kyo Games, with Kyo meaning crazy. And as their first real project, it does not disappoint in that aspect. The story here isn't a straightforward narrative, it's more like a maze of stories. One of their biggest selling points was that this is supposedly a never-ending visual novel, containing 100 routes. Not just 100 endings, mind you, 100 routes. But it's also supposed to be a game where you can just get 1 or 2 endings and have a satisfying experience. So yeah, that's quite ambitious, especially because it's not just a visual novel, it's actually a strategy RPG. But before I delve any deeper into it, don't worry, this video will be completely spoiler free, and if you like content like this, be sure to leave a like and maybe check out my channel. All the support is greatly appreciated as always, but without further ado, let's discuss the insanity that is the 100 Line Lost Defense Academy. I talked a lot just now about how massive this game really is, but when you start it, it actually seems pretty straightforward. After an opening cutscene showing the life of our protagonist living in a domed city, you wake up in the school. A mascot character, Sirei, shows up, declaring that he's your commander, and that humanity is at war with these creatures called the Invaders. And you've been selected to fight this war on the front lines. Specifically, you have to defend this school, this academy, for 100 days. Right from the start, a lot of mysteries get thrown at you, but you can rest assured that everything will be answered. You just need to be patient and allow the game to take you on this journey, because at a certain point there will be a shift as the game starts to show you its true colors. Suddenly it's not that straightforward anymore, as you get to decide how your 100 days will continue. And many moments you will be hit with this screen, and these choices will decide literally everything. Will you tell the truth or will you lie? Will you spare this invader or execute them? Will you dodge an attack and run away or launch a counterattack? Will you eat fish for dinner or meat? Your choices allow you to navigate through this narrative. They will put you on a certain route and lead you down a branch within that route, until you ultimately arrive at a conclusion. You're not simply shaping this story as a game like Devil Survivor or other decision games allow you to do. No, you are changing this story in far more fundamental ways. These choices change the course of the entire game. It's honestly kind of hard to explain, especially because I don't want to go into specifics, but also because you are obviously playing the 100 line in every single route. You're always dealing with the same core characters, depending on which ones are alive, and you're always a part of the same core narrative. The topics and themes that the game explores are consistent throughout, they're just being explored from different perspectives. But despite that, these routes can genuinely feel like they're almost different games. Some routes, for example, explore the invaders in greater detail. You learn about their culture, their religion, and how that plays into this war, while other routes are more contained within the confines of the academy itself. These routes even transcend genres. Some of them, like comedy or romance, are more light-hearted, and others, like slasher or calamity, are basically horror. And then you have the coming-of-age route, which is basically a classic shonen, and you have the cult route, which will disturb you and mentally scar you. Your main objective evolves and changes depending on where your choices lead you, and you won't know what the right course of action is most of the time. You might think that the choices have straightforward consequences, like choosing to sacrifice someone obviously means that someone will die. But how will the narrative evolve if this character sacrifices themselves? Maybe it'll motivate another student to fight even harder, or maybe it has the opposite effect and they won't be willing to fight after the death of their friend. You are just one person making a choice, you are not deciding for the rest of the universe, and this game is no stranger to exploring the chaotic aspect of the butterfly effect. But that's also what I love about it. You make these choices, but you're not changing the world with them. I've been referring to this game as a maze, but the most important part is that you're not changing the maze itself. The world has rules, it has a history, the characters are set, but you are directing it. You gain different perspectives on this war and the people fighting in it. Maybe you find a new way to fight back, maybe you find new allies, or maybe you find a way to escape it all. And because of this, the different routes also inform each other, with certain scenes gaining an entirely different meaning depending on which routes you've done before, simply because you now know more about this world and about these characters. It's such a fantastic and fascinating feeling when you're playing through one route and they suddenly drop a reveal that just changes your view on another route that you didn't even know was related at first. And just like the game is shaping your perspective on the situation, it's also shaping our characters, especially the protagonist Takumi. He always has the same starting point and he is always the same person, but Takumi at the end of one route can be very different from the Takumi at the end of another, and that's only natural. Depending on your choices, he gets put into different situations and needs to deal with different issues. Some of these situations can drive him to madness and the story will show you his descent, while another route might show you a glimmer of hope to fight for. Takumi is just such a fascinating character, especially because everything is always deeply rooted in his desire to save everyone. His characterization is so incredibly consistent, and that makes it super interesting to see how he evolves throughout different scenarios, which also applies to the rest of the characters. Of course, you have the standouts, with Eito, Nozomi, and Hiroko being the focus of multiple routes, while others could have been explored a bit more, but even then, everyone gets multiple moments to shine and they're all extremely memorable and compelling in their own ways. Even the ones that I didn't think I would like at first. I was always pleasantly surprised how consistent and how well developed and characterized this entire cast is. My only gripe here is that I would just love for some of them to be explored even further. But then again, I still have 30 or so endings left to see, so maybe some characters have their best routes still coming up. Editing archery here. While making this video, I've done like 20 more endings, and I am here to update you all on this little point, because while making this video, Darumi was one of the characters that I had in mind as someone who could use some more time, but since then I have done the Red Snom route, and now I feel like my third eye has opened and Darumi is now absolute peak. Back to archery from a few weeks ago. Across the different routes, their characterization can sometimes be a tiny bit inconsistent though, as some of them lean into their character tropes a bit too much at times. And now that I'm talking about this consistency stuff, let's get my main gripes with this game out of the way. Because so far it happened once or twice that I entered a route where they introduce a really cool concept, they set it up to be a grand divergence and you start to think and theorize about all the possible implications and consequences, but then the route starts doing time skips, and when you ultimately reach those consequences, the emotional weight is just missing because of all of those time skips. The cool concept is still there. In a vacuum, they also live up to having some pretty wild consequences and conclusions, but a lot of the weight simply isn't there. It feels like the developers were running out of time and had to rush these storylines to a conclusion, creating something more of a short and optional what-if branch rather than a fully fledged route. But on the other hand, we also have routes like Comedy, which has such vastly different branches that it's basically just 4 routes in one. And don't get me wrong, the Comedy route can be pretty funny in my opinion. It felt like the devs just said fuck it and had some fun, and I do like that. If you're gonna do it in any game, it does work surprisingly well here. But then there's also the Ava route, which had a super intriguing concept, but they only gave that one a fraction of the runtime, so it made me feel like this route could have been fleshed out a bit more, or you know, maybe we could have cut one branch of the Comedy route and devoted that time to fleshing out this Ava route a bit more. Of course, if you have a game with 100 routes, you can't really expect every single one to be of the same quality, and this only happened like twice so far within my 160 hours, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this is a flaw, and I'm not gonna give them a free pass just because they created this miracle game that I genuinely can't understand is real. But, to be fair, the game also doesn't really have 100 routes. I'm sorry Kodaka, but the truth has to be said. It would be more accurate to say that the game has 100 endings spread out across 21 major routes, as seen in the naming conventions and achievements. I wanted to clarify this point because while it is still absolutely insane, 21 routes sounds a lot more reasonable. I don't know, I'm just worried that I'm scaring people off of this game. Like I'm just a madman going around telling people to play this 200-hour long game with 100 routes. Which I am, and that would be an accurate description, but you should play it, trust me, it's definitely worth it. Like, can you imagine playing a game for 40 to 50 hours, after rolling credits multiple times already and your friend mentions a party member that you've literally never even seen? So you keep playing the game, end up in a few different routes, and suddenly that character is there. They join your party and they're awesome. And then you think you've seen everything, you think you know everything. So you open Twitter, and because the game has been out for a bit now, people are talking more openly about it, and suddenly you see fan art of yet another character that you've never met, but at this point you're 85 hours into the game and you're like, what is even going on anymore? That's the 100th line in a nutshell. It is insane. And you know what? Maybe it is kinda scary. It's crazy that this game exists in the way that it does, because I say that it has 21 major routes, but every single one of these routes has routes within them. In this video I've been referring to those inner routes as branches, by the way. And the crazy part is that some of these branches feel so distinct that they might as well be their own route. I mentioned Comedy earlier, which has like 4 branches within one route, which are all extremely different, but I'm also looking at you Slasher route. That's like easily another multiple routes in one. So no, it's not exactly 100 routes, and that should be taken with a grain of salt, as some branch points do happen near the end and simply leads to a different conclusion. But even then, each and every ending and each and every branch is pretty substantially different. But while the sheer size of this game is kind of scary, it's also less overwhelming as you'd expect, because you can genuinely have a satisfying experience with a satisfying satisfying conclusion without getting even near the 100-hour mark. Some people will feel the need to explore every single route, I'm sure, and that will take more than 100 hours, but the important part is that that also feels rewarding because of the things that I mentioned, like exclusive characters and the focus on different aspects of the world. The game experience also stays fresh because every route is so different. I'm not kidding when I say that I'm 160 hours into the game and it genuinely doesn't feel repetitive yet. But the most important part maybe is that the game is designed for you to simply find your ending, and that's why it's not that overwhelming. Not even the creators are asking you to play through every single route or branch. Maybe you'll play 2 or 3 routes and get an ending that resonates with you. You'll sit there watching the credits and without realizing it, your hands will be held up next to your head as you whisper to yourself, absolute cinema. Hell, maybe that even happens after your first route already. The game does not have a traditional true ending. There are routes like the second scenario that is focused on answering the main mystery, but while finding the truth is nice and all, maybe you won't like where the truth leads you, and you'll resonate more with how the story is wrapped up in another route. Personally, whenever I heard that the developers mentioned this in an interview, I always had some doubts, because how can there not be a single true ending? There's always an ending that lines up with the vision of the creators, right? But that's kind of the beauty of this game. This entire game, this maze with all of its endings, is the vision. Depending on which path you walk, in which order you do the routes, depending on the information that you find and how you personally process that information, you do genuinely decide your true ending. Of course, there are some joke endings, but when I talk to other people that are playing the game or people that have already finished it, a lot of them will give me a different answer when I ask them about their favorite ending, their true ending. Some people will mention SF, other people will mention second scenario, yeah sure, but I've also heard people mention one of the killing game or one of the coming of age endings. And I truly think that that is something special. Your ending is part of your route, your journey, and that makes this game an extremely personal experience. And I genuinely cannot stress this enough, because even if you just did the second scenario, the route that answers most of the main mystery surrounding the Academy itself, I can guarantee you that there are still so many aspects of this world and of this story that you simply don't know about. A lot of characters are still holding secrets from you, and there are so many plot points in this game that that route doesn't even touch on. But then again, you genuinely don't have to do any routes in specific. If you got a random ending and you feel satisfied with your experience, then that is fantastic. But don't worry, the game also makes traversing these routes very manageable through the flowchart. It's quite easy to go back and take a different path at any point after the prologue. So if you notice that you stumbled into a route that you're not interested in, like the comedy route or something, and you want to go back to a more serious story, then you can just go right back. There's no need to quote-unquote waste your time on a story that you're not into. I do wish that this flowchart was a bit more in-depth though. It could be nice to have little recap notes at branching points or something, because I'm trying to play through every single route right now, so I'm jumping around a lot, and sometimes it takes me a bit to get up to speed again. Like, yeah, I know what day I'm on, I know the choices that I made to get here, and who's alive and who's dead and stuff, but I would like to know the exact status right now. It's not a massive deal, because the game does make clever use of small flashbacks, but it's a small quality of life feature that could go a long way in my opinion. Kodaka, I know you're watching this, you better be taking notes right now. But one last thing that I do want to mention about the story is that this game is very much a Kodaka and Uchikoshi game. And with that I mean that these writers have a very distinct writing style, in the way that they handle their characters and in the way that they structure their narratives. With Uchikoshi, it's mostly seen in the way that these different branches and routes work, how information is being fed to you across all of these branches, how little cross-timeline mysteries are being set up, and how some branches even have story locks that require you to beat another branch first. But the characters are where you'll definitely feel Kodaka's writing style, with all of them being very over the top and having some interesting dialogue. Just let me tell you, it's always really funny to show this game to a friend who has absolutely no clue what's going on.
Oh my god! Shut up already! Why do I have to be surrounded by a bunch of clowns? What is this, the circus? Did you all arrive here in the same tiny car?
This style might not be for everyone, but if you like any of their previous works, I feel like the 100 line is a very safe bet for your enjoyment. And even if it's your first time playing a game from them, I genuinely highly recommend it. It's just that if you played one of their games and absolutely hated it, this isn't gonna change that opinion. But while Kodaka and Uchikoshi created the bulk of this game and wrote the foundation for everything, there are also a number of other writers involved in this, with different routes often being collaborative works. This is why some characters sometimes feel a bit more tropey depending on the route, as I mentioned earlier, but it's honestly impressive how consistent the narrative is and how every route feels like a genuine part of this one greater experience. And it's also really cool because now you might finish a route that you absolutely loved and then you can see in the credits which writer worked on it, so you can go check out their other routes or even their other works and other video games. But since we're already getting quite off topic for the story, maybe it's time to move on to the gameplay. Because yes, outside of being a visual novel, this game also has a pretty fast-paced and surprisingly good strategy RPG combat system. The main theme that this game is exploring is obviously war, and since it's a tactical RPG, every single character can take an active role in battle. And personally, I really love this combat system, especially because of how it ties into those themes perfectly. To give one example, death during combat isn't permadeath, it's actually a mechanic that you can use to your advantage. You are meant to sacrifice your units and strategize who to sacrifice when to gain the most value out of their deaths, which is very clearly the game desensitizing both the characters and the players to these actions. While Fire Emblem has you fighting to keep your characters and friends alive every turn, here the characters are just pawns, they're mere weapons. And this gets quite grim the more you think about it, because we don't even know that much about the enemy, but every single in-game morning you are told to
be ready to give your lives to protect our beloved school from the vile and barbaric enemy!
Pause the game during combat and all it tells you is to simply annihilate the enemy, with your only upper hand really being that you can sacrifice your units. A lot of the story is about characters trying to justify their actions, and the sacrifice mechanic takes a part of that and puts it in your hands. But also on a more surface level between narrative and gameplay, I really like how the combat system evolves in harmony with the story progression. At first, a lot of your fellow students are simply refusing to fight in this war, but as the story progresses, you slowly convince more and more of them to join the fight, which unlocks more units and gives a satisfying and steady progression to the complexity of the combat, while also making each and every moment that a character joins the fight not only a cool gameplay moment where you get to test out a new unit, but it's also a culmination in their character arc. Outside of just unlocking new characters, you of course also unlock new items and skills, new potions and consumables. Whenever you fight a boss, they will have a unique gimmick to change up a fight, and all of this just turns it into a really fun combat system in my opinion. But unlike games like Fire Emblem, the fun here doesn't really come from the difficulty and challenge. There is some challenge, don't get me wrong, but the fun is more in trying to clear these battles as efficiently as possible. Whenever it's your turn, you have a certain amount of AP, action points, and when you give a command, that costs 1 AP. If you run out of AP, it's the end of your turn. By killing larger and stronger enemies, you also gain 1 AP back, and by taking and dealing damage, you also gain something known as tension. And whenever the tension bar is full, you can use a special attack, or you can use that tension to buff a character, which also gives you AP. Whenever someone is close to dying, they also unlock another special attack that kills the user after using it. This is part of the sacrifice mechanic that I mentioned. They'll be back in the next wave, and when someone dies, you also gain 100% tension. which you can then use to either use another special attack to kill enemies and get AP and keep your turn going, or you can use that to buff characters to gain AP to keep your turn going. Do you see the cycle that we're doing here? On top of that, every single character also has their own unique playstyle, like Nozomi is a healer and Shoma is a tank, and on top of that you also have passives, like Takumi gaining +1 attack for each fallen ally in a wave. And all of these things come together to create this puzzle, where you're just trying to keep your turn going for as long as possible. Master this system and you can even clear entire maps, entire boss fights, before the enemies even have a chance to fight back. But if you're not into the optimizing your turn type of gameplay and you want a genuine challenge, in the first post-launch updates they added a despair difficulty option completely for free. I haven't tried it out myself, but you know, if you want to play around with a higher difficulty, you can always give that a shot. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum though, the developers have also mentioned that they know that their audience is mostly made up out of visual novel fans, so if you lose a battle you can always lower the difficulty even further or retry a battle with some buffs enabled. It's made in a way that everyone can play this game and enjoy it in the way that they want to. One small side note to all of this though, since the game does have so many routes, if you are a completionist you will eventually run into a situation where you're fighting a boss that you've already defeated in another route, and in those cases the game will give you a skip battle option. Of course you can only skip battles if you've cleared a similar one before, and if there is a story moment during a battle, those won't be skipped. It's honestly just a really nice quality of life feature in my opinion. You might not be able to tell from the sheer length of it, but yes, the game does respect your free time. But then the final thing that I want to go over in this video is another gameplay mechanic known as exploration, because sometimes you are tasked to leave the academy and gather resources, and this has its own gameplay system. Sometimes you'll have to do it because the story needs you to go exploring, but you can also do it on your own volition whenever the game gives you free time. Free time is what happens on the days that there are no story events happening. Usually you use this time to level your stats or do hangout events with your party members. They're basically social links, but because you need resources to upgrade your skills, sometimes you're just gonna have to go out and explore. And the exploration minigame is basically a board game, with every space containing an event. Most of these events are material pickups, where the game will give you a situation and you get 2 or 3 different options on how to act. Pick the right option and you get materials, but pick the wrong option and you either lose HP or you lose materials. But of course, not every single tile is just you get materials, because there are also combat spaces or unique item spaces or other random things. In my previous video, I said that this mechanic was my least favorite thing about the game, mostly because I couldn't really see any strategy in this. It felt like just random stuff happening because it's funny, I guess. Or at least Kodaka thinks it's funny, and I couldn't really figure out how to know which options are right and which options are wrong. I just thought it was kind of a dumb system, but I was hoping that it would improve as the game progressed. And now that I've played the game for quite a bit longer, I can confidently tell you that this mechanic is indeed the worst part of the game, easily and by far. That's not to say that it didn't get any better though. Part of it is RNG, but I can also pretty confidently go out on an exploration now and come back with enough resources to last me quite a while. A lot of it just comes down to game knowledge, so while it does get more fun, I would call it okay at best, and as I said, it's still easily the worst part of the game. But that's also a bit of a sour note to end on, and I don't want to dwell on the negatives for too long, because in conclusion, I cannot recommend the 100-line Last Defense Academy enough. This game was just made with so much love and passion for the genre, and you can feel that as you're playing it. Kodaka and Uchikoshi have said in many interviews that this game is their magnum opus, even going as far as putting their careers on the line. This game is self-published and self-funded. They went into financial financial debt and were at risk of losing the studio if the game wasn't successful, all because they wanted the 100th line to get out there. And now that I played it myself, I can see why they would go to these lengths to release this title. I get why Kodaka and all of the other writers were advertising the game this much on social media. It's an extremely important and relevant game. I even found myself thinking like, you know what, if this is their final game, what a way to go out. But thankfully it didn't have to come to that, because the game was a financial success and they will be able to keep making more Peak for us to consume. And their passion didn't simply stop on release so they could move on to the next thing. They're actively updating the game, adding in fan requested features like the harder difficulty mode, and they're even openly talking about adding in DLC routes or sequel routes. The way that Kodaka talks about this game, you'd almost think that it's alive, with statements like, the 100th line is a beast that will keep growing as it feeds on your support. And let me just tell you that I will be the first in line to support it, because it deserves all of the support it can get. This game is definitely a niche, and I'll be surprised if it gets even mentioned once at the Game Awards, but that's also okay. It's made for a specific audience, and that audience is eating this up. You hear all the time that, oh, the 100th line is such a long game, it's such a massive game, it takes so many hours to complete, and I'm also part of that, just look at the title of this video, but the most important part is that this game is just really good as well. I would not care about the game being this long if it was bad, then why would I even be playing it? I am making this video because, yeah, it's long and it's insane and I don't know how it's real, but it is so good. It has consumed my entire year, basically. It's easily my game of the year. It's one of my favorite games of all time, even. It's a celebration of games, of visual novels, and it's so beautiful. At every twist and turn, it has me utterly invested. I think about it all the time, even when I'm taking a break from it, because I'm taking my time with this game. Sometimes I'll finish her out and take a break for a couple of days or weeks. I'll play another game and return afterwards. But not a day goes by that I'm not thinking about these characters, this story, or the message that it's conveying. I'm always thinking about booting it up and just starting my next round, but I actively have to stop myself because I know that if I boot it up right now, it'll be the only thing I do until I roll credits once more, and then I won't be able to finish this script or any other game that I'm playing. I have literally never experienced anything even remotely like this, where all of these routes come together to create this unbelievable experience, creating extremely memorable moments one after another that simply wouldn't be possible in any other game, because the insane scope of it all adds so many extra dimensions and extra layers to every single plot point, every single character, and just everything that this game stands for. And that is the important part. Yeah, some of the routes might not be as good as other routes, some of the routes might be missing some potential, and in some scenes, some characters might be leaning into their tropes a bit much. But in the grander scheme of things, in the grander schemes of what this game is trying to achieve, I feel like simply the fact that everything came together so well is what matters here, and that is what makes this game so special. If you're gonna play this game, the only thing that I will say as a final piece of advice is to take your time with it and give the game the time to show you what it's all about. This game does not have a slow start per se, but it does hide its true colors at first. It takes a while before the first real decision pops up, but when it does, everything will become clear and it's an incredible moment. But the fact that it takes this time is also part of the beauty of it. This game is confident that you'll reach that point because it's just a crazy ride from start to finish, and I am savoring every second of it. The 100th line Last Defense Academy is a game like no other, and you just have to experience it for yourself. It's a maze of decisions, but you need to do what you think is right. Don't simply fight this war because they tell you to. Make your own choices. It's your future. If If you made it to this point of the video, seriously, thank you so much for watching. I've been working on this video for quite a while. It started as a 100 hours of the 100 line video, but while I was writing the script, I just couldn't stop myself and I played some more, which made me want to change the script until it turned into this 150 plus hours of the 100 line video that you just watched. And now, since editing this video, I'm even further into the game. I'm nearing the end of my 100% completion run now, actually, but I really wanted to put this spoiler-free video out first before I finish the game, or before I even think about making another video that may or may not include spoilers. Talking about spoilers, by the way, I just want to mention that this video was spoiler-free, but you might have seen some scenes that might make you think like, damn, how is this not a spoiler? I feel like this guy just spoiled the entire fucking game for me. But no, don't worry. I was very careful with picking select scenes, picking very out of context scenes, and since there are like 100 routes, it doesn't really matter to know that yes, maybe Kurara will die in one of these 100 ones. So I was very, very careful about that, and that is also the reason why you see so many clips of that damn comedy route in this video, because it was just really easy to take some clips of that absolute nonsense and use it as background footage, because who cares about spoilers for the comedy route? Hey, look, they have fish heads for some reason. I don't know what that's about. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But no, I just really wanted to have this video out before the end of the year, because all of 2025 has been consumed by the 100 line for me, so it's also very fitting in my opinion that this will be my final review of 2025. Also fun coincidence that I noticed, this video is also the 100th video on my channel, so that's something. But this isn't the final video of 2025, however, so be on the lookout for that. Those videos will release when they release within the next few weeks. One more thing that I wanted to mention before wrapping this up. Thank you guys so much for 1000 subscribers. I made a little community note about it. I'll talk about it more in my end of year video as well, but this is the first video that I'm uploading after reaching 1000, so I really just wanted to say thank you. But yeah, we'll talk about it another time, and I'll let you guys know what I'm planning for this special milestone. But let's just wrap this up, because I'm really rambling. I'm looking at my Audacity. I should not be talking for this long. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, leave a comment. Tell me what you think of this game. Tell me what you think of the 100th line. What is your favorite route? Actually, yes, let's do that. Tell me, what is your favorite route in this game? I am very curious. Check out my channel. We might have reached 1000 subscribers, but don't let that stop you from subscribing, because more epic content is coming soon. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.